Today we're looking at half blind locking rabbets. This part back here is a quarter method. This up here is a modified half blind. That's a good joint right there. Y'all stick with me and I'll show how we're gonna do it. So a couple of weeks ago, I did a quarter method, or in that case, it was half. In other words, half the thickness of your material. So you set the Dado Stack, the fence, and the height of the blade to half the thickness of your material. But this week, I'm gonna kind of add to it. We're gonna do a half blind locking rabbet. In other words, the front will be a solid piece of wood until you open the drawer. So that's half blind, kind of like half blind dovetails, except in a half blind locking rabbet, you don't see anything. But in this video, see, the contrast in wood works good. So I got a piece of walnut and the sides are cherry. If you remember the quarter, or in that case, half, was out of plywood. I went ahead and done this one, and the thickness of the sides in this case is exactly half an inch. The thickness of the walnut, which the front, it's gonna look just like that, and you can put your pull on it or whatever you want to do. This is 5/8. So from a half to 5/8, there'll be an 1/8 of an inch lap right here that will be forming the half blind. So I decided to go with a piece of plywood. This is 3/16 plywood. And I was thinking in a box this size, that's not gonna be a problem. So I have offcuts right here, a piece of offcut. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna set up the blade width, height, and the fence to 1/4 inch. So I've got a 1/4 inch setup block, and what I done, I went through and I put the distance from the blade to the fence at 1/4, the height at 1/4, and I checked the, I did do a test piece to see if my group, my Dado Stack, was set on 1/4, and it is. My Dado Stack, I got to add 12 thousandths shim to the outside two blade to get a 0.250. It's just the way this Dado Stack does. I got a Irwin marbles, and this is the only Dado Stack that I've ever had. So I don't have experience with any of the others, but it has served me well. I probably had it for 8 or 9 years. But the chart says the two outside blades is 1/4 inch, but it's not. And it's always been that way, so I don't think it's wore down. However, I went ahead and, like I say, got it set by my setup block. But I still want to be able to take some scrap pieces that are the same dimensions that I've got right there in order to verify if there's any tweaking that needs to be done. It needs to be done before I make my cuts. So we're going to cut our test pieces now and test our setup. one thing I've noticed is there's a little tear out right there. So I'm going to get me a block to put behind this piece to eliminate that tear out. But one thing, if it's done correctly with the way it registers, it holds itself at a 90. So that's what you look for, a 90 degree. It makes everything else, it's kind of like the foundation of the house. It makes everything else work right if you can get it good and square. So to prevent tear out, I went ahead and threw together some push blocks. This one right here, I'm going to take care of this piece because the Dados, the Rabbets go on the back piece. The Dados is going to be on the side pieces. So let's go ahead and, so I've got this thing and it's at a 90 degree angle, so that's important to hold that thing true. And then what I can do, I can push it through there and any tear out will be eliminated. Really need to get this fray and this fuzz and all off of it. I've had that to throw the fit off. And you need to make sure all that it's not going to be any debris getting in the way. So I think I got that one. So that's got the back piece with the rabbets on it. Now we're going to cut the Dados right here on both of the sides. Now let's test our fit. That actually goes together really well. You don't want it real tight. If you got to drab it together dry, it'll be too tight. And what I have learned, it breaks right there, just like a weld breaks beside of the weld. It'll break right beside it when you go to beat and have to beat it together and all that. But anyway, that's what we're looking at right there. Now we're ready to cut the front. This is going to be the half blind portion. As of right now, we've not moved anything. Our setup for the quarter method is still set. We've cut everything and now we're ready to start cutting on the face. All right, the first cut, if you noticed, the outside of the box has been away from the fence and away from the table. This is the same thing, so you make sure you get this right. The inside of the box goes to the fence, just like the rest of it. Because this is important, because you may have it turned. Okay, I want this because of the grain, you know. So if that's important, you need to make sure the inside of the box goes to the fence. All right, leaving the setup the same, you see what's happened? So I did this to show you what would happen if we left the setup the same. But with the front, you need to change your blade. In other words, we're going to take the side of the blade, the side of the box, and raise the blade up to match. In other words, this is a 1/2 inch. We're going to raise the blade up 1/2 inch. then make another cut, then we'll have to come back and do another adjustment right here. Now, before you make this adjustment here, you want to make sure all your boxes, everything's done up to this point, and all you lack is the faces. So now, the width of the side of the box, in other words, what's going to meet, the blade needs to come up. In this case here, this is a 1/2 inch, blade needs to come up 1/2 inch. But what I like to do is just take the side, that way if it's a little short, a little over, whatever, I mean, so bring your tooth up to the apex of the circle, right in the center. And then we're gonna raise this blade up. Okay, I can just barely feel it. So now that we got the blade up, I can just barely feel that point. So I think we're gonna be okay. So what we can do, we can take our test piece. We're gonna run it down through there and just see what it looks like. So basically what we're doing, that's where it's gonna be. And it's hanging over about what I felt like right there. I mean, just enough to say it's hanging over. Now, you go through it, now that you got like you want it, you go through and make all your cuts on all your fronts here. Then what we're gonna do, we'll come back and we'll cut this piece off just to that bottom's end. So let's go ahead and cut all the fronts. So we got our test piece. We're gonna cut, now that we got all of these cut, if you had 15 drawers, that you need to be in this spot before we move any further. Because we need to trim that one. That needs to be trimmed back to the bottom of this meets that. So we got to sneak up on that. So I took my extension fence off and put a sacrifice fence on it, because what we need to do is come under here. You lower it to where it cuts this, but don't cut that. So you've got a 1/4 inch there to play with. So now that we got the height like we want it, what we're gonna need to do is set the fence. What we're gonna do is we're gonna bury that thing. What we do, we buried about half of it. Okay, we lowered the blade to where it cut this wider piece, but not the outside piece. Now we're gonna shorten the 1/4 inch piece till it homes up over here. We're gonna do this with the test piece. So what we're gonna do, we got this piece here, we'll just use it. And we're gonna sneak up on it until we find it. Sometimes you really gotta show patience here, but we do have a test piece. But you're looking for a good fit, so this is the way you have to get it. That is it. That is what I'm hunting. So we'll run the faces through there and we got it. See the front, that's what you're gonna see. Now we took quarter method, made a half blind locking rabbet, and made it pretty. Now I'm gonna take that plywood, I'm gonna run me a groove all the way around. We'll put that bottom in there and we about got this one. What I did here, I just took my regular blade and I went through here bumping the fence over. When I got the groove wide enough to fit the plywood bottom, and that's what I did right there. So now let's put it together and see what it looks like. So here we are. We're gonna go ahead and assemble our box. Our box with dados, grooves, and rabbets. Okay, so let's go ahead and see if we'll just go ahead and glue it together. One good thing about this type of deal is you only clamp one direction. Let's go ahead and put them in the clamps. Good and square. Yes, it is. Well, we got our, so I think it's set up enough we can take a look at it. Half blind block and rack. I know some of them are calling a modified block and rabbet. To me, well, I don't know. Half blind lock and rabbet sounds good to me, but some call it a modified block and rabbet. But the front of the face, if you can just imagine, see, it hides everything. The little holes, the edges of these boards. To me, that's a nice way to make drawers, especially if you're batching out a bunch of them. You get it set up, I mean, it'll take a few minutes to set it up. Then you can batch out any size. It could be wider or taller, provided they're the same width. And the fronts, same thing. If they're in this case, 5/8 by 1/2 inch, all the drawers was 5/8 by 1/2 inch. You could batch out any size. They could be taller, wider, deeper, narrower. Same setup would get them all. So I appreciate you joining me. Hope you learned something. That's a good looking drawer. You could batch out a bunch. Him old Larry library catalogs had all them drawers. That's perfect. I've actually seen some of them use locking rabbets, but it makes a nice joint. Appreciate you watching, and y'all be safe. And yeah, if y'all got a bunch of drawers to do, that's a good method. But I will catch you on the next one.